They say the devil's greatest trick was convincing the world he didn't exist. What if a similar deception, far more grand, unfolded on the hallowed grounds of football, cloaked in the dazzling guise of absolute perfection? The myth of perfection. Listen closely. Forget the headlines, the highlight reels, the roar of the crowd. We're delving deeper, beyond the veneer of sporting triumph, into a season so pristine, so utterly flawless, it defied every single law of probability, every shred of human fallibility. This wasn't just a good year for Bayern Munich, it was an anomaly, a statistical ghost in the machine that left experts scratching their heads and rivals numb with disbelief. Their treble-winning campaign wasn't merely dominant, it was absolute. Every single match, from the mundane group stage clashes to the seismic knockout encounters, concluded with a Bayern victory. Not a single draw, not a solitary loss, not even a moment of genuine doubt seemed to mar their march towards history. It was a relentless, surgical assault on the very concept of imperfection. Think about it. A squad of human beings, subject to fatigue, pressure, injury, and the capricious whims of fate, navigating an entire football calendar, domestic league, domestic cup, and the gladiatorial arena of the Champions League, without a single misstep. No off days, no inexplicable slumps, no unlucky deflections, no moments of individual error that lead to dropped points. Every pass was crisp, every tackle precise, every shot found its mark with unnerving regularity. Opponents, even Europe's elite, seemed to wilt before them, not just physically, but mentally. It wasn't just that Bayern outplayed them, it felt as if they outwilled them, from the very first whistle. They shattered records, yes, but more importantly, they shattered the very expectation of how sport should unfold. There was an eerie predictability to their unpredictability, a cold, calculated efficiency that felt manufactured. This wasn't merely a team playing at their peak, it felt like a perfectly calibrated machine, operating with an almost pre-programmed certainty. And that, my friends, is where the story truly begins to unravel. Because in the chaotic beauty of football, perfection isn't just rare, it's practically impossible. Unless, of course, the game itself was being played by a different set of rules, rules only Bayern understood. The glitch in the matrix. Now, let's peel back another layer. While the world celebrated their unprecedented achievement, a select few of us, the ones who watch closer, who feel the subtle vibrations beneath the surface, started noticing things. Small, almost imperceptible anomalies. Like the way opposing goalkeepers, renowned for their steel, seem to consistently misjudge a crucial long-range shot, their reactions just a fraction of a second too slow, their dives just a hair off. Or the way a seemingly indestructible centre-back for a rival team would suddenly pull up with a hamstring tweak just moments before a decisive Bayern attack, leaving a gaping hole in their defense that Bayern inevitably exploited. These weren't isolated incidents, they were a recurring motif, a subtle, disturbing pattern woven into the tapestry of their flawless season. Consider the odd, almost hypnotic rhythm of their play. Bayern didn't just pass the ball, they sculpted the game, dictating not just possession, but the very tempo of their opponents' minds. You'd see rival players, brimming with confidence pre-match, slowly succumb to a dazed, almost compliant state as the game wore on. Their usual aggressive pressing would wane, their passes would become hesitant, their decision-making inexplicably clouded. It was as if Bayern weren't just dominating the physical space, but the mental space within their opponents' heads. There was an underlying current of control, almost a psychological undertow, pulling everything in their direction. It started with subtle signs, the way a critical VR decision, always borderline, seemed to break their opponent's momentum, or the bizarre coincidence of key rival players picking up seemingly innocuous yellow cards in the early stages of matches, forcing them to play with an almost crippling caution. Did you know that in the earliest recorded organized football matches, some teams were known to employ so-called shadow players, individuals whose sole purpose was to subtly disrupt opponents' focus off the ball, a technique now meticulously studied by modern neuro-linguistic programming specialists? These weren't official positions, just whispers of a darker, more manipulative side to the beautiful game. What if that ancient, forbidden art had been refined, not by one player, but by an entire system, honed to a razor's edge? The question wasn't if Bayern would win, but how they orchestrated every single factor to ensure that outcome, often in ways that eluded conventional understanding. The perfection wasn't just about their skill, it was about the subtle, almost invisible erosion of their opposition's ability to compete. Whispers from the dugout. The whispers grew louder, though still confined to hushed tones in dimly lit corners of the football world. Coaches of defeated teams, usually gracious in victory, would often appear disoriented, their post-match analyses strangely vague, almost as if they couldn't quite articulate why their meticulously prepared plans had disintegrated so completely. One notable manager, after a particularly brutal 5-0 drubbing, was overheard muttering about ghosts in the machine and invisible currents that derailed his players' focus. Publicly, it was dismissed as sour grapes, the ramblings of a beaten man. But those who listened closely detected a genuine bewilderment, a profound sense that something beyond mere football talent had been at play. And then there were the Bayern players themselves. While visibly ecstatic after victories, there was often an unsettling detachment, a coolness that bordered on the robotic. Their celebrations were efficient, professional, lacking the raw, unbridled emotion you'd expect from men who had just achieved the unthinkable. It was as if they expected the win, not just hoped for it. Their eyes, when caught on camera in moments of unguarded quiet, sometimes held a glint, not of joy, but of a deeper, almost unsettling satisfaction. A knowledge, perhaps, that transcended the simple outcome of a game. It wasn't the triumphant roar of a warrior, it was the quiet nod of an engineer whose complex machine had performed exactly as designed. The pattern of injuries in opponent camps became another disturbing footnote. Key players, vital to their respective team strategies, would pick up minor yet decisive injuries in the days leading up to a Bayern clash. Not career-ending, but just enough to rule them out, or severely hamper their performance. Coincidences, the pundits declared. Bad luck. But how many coincidences can one team benefit from before the word itself starts to ring hollow? It began to feel less like chance, and more like a carefully managed variable. The precise timing, the targeted players, the clinical effect, it was too clean, too neat to be organic. The narrative of Bayern's dominance was being rewritten, not by their goals, but by the subtle dismemberment of their opposition from within. The unseen architect. The deeper you delve, the more unsettling the picture becomes. This wasn't about referees, or even about traditional cheating. This was far more insidious, far more advanced. It was about manipulating the very fabric of competitive sport, turning the beautiful game into a controlled experiment. That secret, if you can even call it that, wasn't a magic potion or a pact with unseen forces in the mythical sense. It was something far more terrifying because it was rooted in our own humanity, our own psychology, pushed to its absolute, weaponized limit. The clues were there, for those who knew where to look. Bayern's training facilities, always state-of-the-art, had quietly undergone renovations. Not just new gyms or pitches, but specialized sensory deprivation chambers, advanced neural feedback labs, and an entirely new department dedicated to cognitive performance optimization, a term that, in their hands, took on a chilling, almost Orwellian undertone. Their scouting network wasn't just identifying talent, it was meticulously cataloging the psychological profiles of every potential opponent, every coach, every key player. Their anxieties, their superstitions, their triggers, their breaking points, all data points in a grand, evolving algorithm. It's a little-known psychological phenomenon that repetitive, precise movements, when observed, can induce a subliminal hypnotic-like state in an opponent, subtly eroding their decision-making capability over time. Imagine an entire team, trained not just to pass and move, but to execute sequences designed to subtly overwhelm the sensory input of their opponents, to create a cognitive overload that leads to confusion, then hesitation, then error. The flawless passing, the relentless pressing, the unwavering discipline, it wasn't just about winning the ball, it was about winning the mind. Bayern was playing on a different field, one where the goal wasn't just to score, but to dismantle the opponent's mental fortress brick by carefully placed brick. Their perfection wasn't just about their own strength, but about their engineered capacity to diminish everyone else's.